So on the day this video is going out, I'm getting married, and I wanted to mark the occasion on Cultaholic because, well, one, it'll help me remember when our wedding anniversary is, and two, who doesn't love a good wrestling love story? And this one has got everything. Two star-crossed lovers, a white wedding, a perverted monster with carnal intentions, and the ceremonial booting of a baby doll. However, as this story takes some sinister and uncomfortable twists and turns, the truth proves once again to be far more interesting than fiction could ever be. Let's wind the clock back 20 years to tell you the story of Lita and Kane. Now, before we get stuck into it, a heads up if this story is a new one for you. It contains discussion of harassment, assault, and unfortunately, miscarriages. I just wanted to give you a heads up before we started in case this is something that might cause upset or cause distress. Right, we start at WrestleMania 20, where Kane was soundly defeated by The Undertaker, returning to the ring after swapping his motorbike for powers of the undead once again. The Big Red Machine did not take that loss to his brother very well and went on a destructive streak in the weeks that followed. Kane claimed that human compassion had made him weak, and now he will only feast on the fear and suffering of the innocent, like the good old days. He was hungering for a sacrifice when he interrupted a mixed tag team match with Matt Hardy and Gail Kim facing Val Venus and Lita. The sacrifice-craving behemoth honed in on Lita, of all people, being all weird around her. It led to Matt Hardy taking a babyface turn to save Lita, who, in storyline, he'd been previously romantically entwined with. Ultimately, Hardy got a shoo-in, and Kane left the ring glaring at Lita as he did so. 1 week later, Raw opened with Kane stalking Lita after her tag match victory, cornering her in the ring, breathing on her, and even sniffing her. He puckered up for a kiss or to bite her head off. It's hard to tell. But Lita managed to escape the clutches of the Big Ick Machine that night, and backstage, Matt Hardy revealed that he has a match with Kane and he's going to teach him a lesson. But Kane wasn't going to wait till later. He beat the bejesus out of Matt until an apology of referees and road agent Finlay managed to break it up. Later in the night, Matt limped to the ring, grimacing in pain from that attack earlier on by Kane. And he is putty in the hands of the Big Red Machine here, who refuses to pin him and instead just choke slams him into oblivion. As Kane goes to tombstone Matt Hardy, Lita rushes to the ring to beg Kane for mercy. And Kane forces Lita to lock lips with him to the disgust of all involved. Behind the scenes, Matt Hardy and Lita were actually the ones locking lips. They've been dating for some time, something that was first brought to the storyline world of wrestling in 2001. It'd be pushed to the background when Lita was sidelined after suffering an injury on the set of Dark Angel, and after Matt was drafted to SmackDown, ushering in the era of Mattitude. In 2003, they were reunited on Raw, but split up on screen at least, when Matt decided that Lita cared more about being women's champion than being his top gal. It was only when Kane started leching on Lita that their paths entwined once again. And Kane did not stop at stealing a kiss from Lita. He stole her entire person the following week when he kidnapped her and tied her up in the basement, forcing her to tell Matt Hardy via the Titantron that she never loved him and she'd met somebody else. She couldn't do it. And when it was revealed to be Kane feeding her these lies of lines, Matt Hardy found his way to his beloved and saved her from certain doom at the hands of the Big Red Ick. Though these acts of violence and depravity were pretty horrible, there was something bigger that Kane was looking for. He was asking Lita for an answer to his question, yes or no. At this point, what the question was shrouded in mystery. What could it be? Will you go to the prom with me? Could you look after my cat while I'm on holiday? Would you like my last Rolo? It could literally be anything. Sadly, it was more horrifying than we could have ever possibly imagined, and we would find out soon enough. To save Matt Hardy from meeting his maker at the hands of Kane a few weeks later, courtesy of a steel chair necklace, Lita ultimately answered Kane's question with an emotionally anguished yes. Kane, delighted with the answer, stopped beating up Matt Hardy and put his arms around Lita in a very creepy, loving embrace. We're still none the wiser at this point, but the body language would suggest that this question had far darker implications than "would you like my last Rolo?" A week later, Matt and Lita met up on Raw. Lita, seemingly a lot calmer, professed her love for Matt and said she'd like to show her love in a very specific way. The kind of way that involves a long night together in a hotel room. I can only assume she was doing that thing that we all do when we take someone we love to a hotel. That's right, use all the pillows to build a fort between the beds and play miniature bowling with a marble and those small complimentary shampoo bottles. You know the game. Lita goes into her dressing room to get her bag before heading out with Matt, but Kane is waiting in her room. Lita asks what Kane is doing there, saying, "I thought this was over." And Kane agrees, but in a very breathy, sinister way. It is all over. She leaves the room, doesn't tell Matt what just happened, and they head off for a naughty night, presumably at a no-tell motel. What in the blazes is going on here? There is no way this is about Kane giving Lita his last Rolo. From here, Kane went back to his usual demonic ways. He beat up Eric Bischoff's nephew, Eugene. He feuded with Chris Benoit over the world title and took Shawn Michaels out of commission in a horrifying attack the night after Bad Blood 2004. Meanwhile, Matt Hardy and Lita are in heaven. They're having a wonderful time reconnecting, and it came with the announcement that together they were expecting a child. With a little Hardy boy on the way, Matthew Bartholomew Hardy decided to do the honourable thing and pop the question live on Raw, asking Lita to marry him. Before she could answer, Kane appeared on the Titantron like a bad memory. He said there's something that Matt needed to know before Lita answers the question. The baby that Lita is carrying is not Matt's. It is, in fact, Kane's. Matt calls Kane a liar, but Lita, through tears, admits that it's true. It is Kane's baby. Matt is devastated. He's horrified. He's angry. He's upset. He's acting. The crowd chant obscenities at Lita because wrestling fans are a classy bunch like that. Lita then reveals to a grief-stricken Matt that she did it because Kane promised to leave him alone if they bumped uglies. Lita also enacted the Ross and Rachel clause, saying that they were technically on a break when it happened. They hadn't officially got back together when her and Kane did the thing. Plus, there was also a chance that Matt's swimmers were more effective and he could still be the daddy. This scene ends with Matt leaving the building very upset and Lita sobbing on the floor, acting. So, to summarise, Kane wanted to continue his legacy, and he selected Lita as the one who would carry his child. After kidnapping her didn't yield the result he wanted, he basically gave her the ultimatum of have my child or I will unalive Matt Hardy. So Lita proceeded to do the thing with Kane. Once it was over, she reunited with Matt and was very quick to suggest getting to the hotel room and having some naughty time together, possibly to do away with the bad memory of what happened with Kane, possibly to cast some doubt over the father of the child. It kind of feels like, and I don't know if this was designed this way, it felt like Lita wanted some ambiguity over who the father was, maybe hoping that Kane would have been placated by some horizontal sports and would not pursue the whole fatherhood thing afterwards. It was a strange way to go about things. All of this, of course, flies in the face of where Kane was mentally after WrestleMania. He wanted to move away from stupid human emotions. He wanted to go back to being a weapon of destruction. So why suddenly do you want to be a dad? The motivation seems meandering at best. Kane unsuccessfully challenged for the world title in the main event of Raw the week after this. Lita appeared post-match to hoof Kane in the clackers and was going to hit him with the world title belt, but Kane grabbed her by the throat for a chokeslam. But he couldn't do it. After all, Lita could possibly be carrying Kane Jr. So he puts her down and scolds her for what she did, warning Lita to not cross him or push his buttons again. Many believe that this was a bit of a turning point in Lita's character, where she realised while she was possibly carrying the heir to the Big Red Machine's throne, Kane couldn't and wouldn't harm her. You see that in segments that follow, Lita becomes much bolder in her confrontations with Kane because of that. And from here, Kane and Matt Hardy go to war once again in a no disqualification match at Vengeance. Lita uses herself as a Pragananand human shield to save Matt getting his brain caved in by steel steps. It gives Matt a chance to smash a steel chair over the Kane stair-wielding bonce, bop, and get the win. Post-match, Matt is still a whirlwind of emotions, and he asks Lita to stay away from the ring for her own safety. And until he gets his own head right, Lita should stay away from him as well. Kane aims his rage at Lita the following night on Raw, on an episode of the highlight reel. Lita confronts Kane, and she is fearless at this point, as we opined earlier. Lita now knows that Kane's going to do nothing while she's carrying his baby, possibly, and she's done being scared. Plus, Lita says Kane can't be the father anyway, as Matt is more of a man than Kane will ever be. If we learn one thing about Kane over the years that is consistent, having his prowess in the bedroom questioned causes Kane to destroy all around him, such as the highlight reel set that he was on at the time, and throw Jericho from the ring as well. Jericho challenges Kane to a fight and once again questions his masculinity, which prompts Kane to come back for an impromptu match, ending with Jericho and the referee both getting chokeslammed. It does seem true to Kane's entire story arc that if you insult his skills in that department, as we said, he will come for you, as he did Jericho just then, and as he did X-Pac in 1999 and in 2000 when Kane was dating Tori. The comments about the fire burning away his, area, or, all that great wrestling banter, it lit a fire under him. Lita is getting her life back at this point. She has shown Kane what for, and a little while later she reconciles with Matt Hardy, who wants to marry Lita and raise the child, whoever the father may be. Kane confronts Lita and tells her that he and Matt Hardy will go one-on-one at SummerSlam, Lita agreeing to raise the stakes that the winner of that match will be her husband. 1 week before their showdown, Lita delivers the devastating news that Matt Hardy is not the father of the baby. DNA tests proving that the baby daddy is in fact Kane. Later in that show, at the contract signing for their SummerSlam wedding match, Kane is in his pomp. He is delighted to have been confirmed as the father. Leads to a very confused and very angry Matt Hardy signing the contract eventually, flipping the table on Kane and knocking the big lad down. It feels like a strange place to reveal that Kane is actually the father in a random backstage segment on the go home for SummerSlam. In terms of the direction that this story goes from here, the ambiguity of whose tadpoles were fastest didn't seem important. So respect to WWE for tying that part up, especially with a story like this. It's more than likely that during this particular administration they would have just etch-a-sketched it away, but they chose to at least give a reason for it. And this brings us to the first ever, and at time of recording, last ever, Till Death Do Us Part match on August the 15th. The love-struck, heartbroken, vengeful Matt Hardy versus the perverted monster Baby Daddy Kane. For Kane, it's a chance to stick it once and for all to Matt, taking his love and his future family from him. Matt is battling for the prize of marrying the love of his life and raising, presumably, his biggest rival's son. It's a weird one, that, and I don't know many county councils in the UK that would touch that particular marital situation with the barge pole, I'll be honest. Despite the best efforts of Matthew and some attempted shenanigans from Lita, Kane won the match with a chokeslam off the top rope. Matt got his bell rung, so we got wedding bells for Lita and Kane. Post-match, Lita gives us a Phoebe in the Park run to the back as Kane smiled his evil smile in the direction of his now future wife. The unhappy couple announced the knot would be tied on Raw, emanating from the Arrowhead Pond in Anaheim, California. The week before, Lita got a party presented by the heel women's locker room. She was gifted contraceptives, a marital aid, and a Photoshop of baby Kane. The latter certainly encouraging the formers. It's the thought that counts, I guess. I'd have just asked for cash. Kane almost got the Intercontinental title as a wedding gift, but assistance from Matt Hardy and Lita kept the title around the waist of their very good friend Edge. So, we come to the wedding of the year. Historically, Kane's character has been hellfire and brimstone. So the decision to have this pristine, macho man, Miss Elizabeth-esque white wedding setup was an interesting one. Kane, who was, at the beginning of our saga, keen to break the shackles of humanity and become a true-blooded monster once more, was wearing an all-white tuxedo, looking like he's off to the Emmy Awards. Gosh bless him. It's not until the wedding starts that you truly appreciate the aura that they have gone for here. Kane comes out all in white with the lights low, with a pianist and a cellist playing what sounds like his theme music, as well as other wedding-type songs in a minor key. I was ready to hate this, but do you know what? I bloody loved it. The crowd do as well at the beginning. Tuxedo Kane getting a big pop as he comes out for his big day. Lita walks to the altar wearing a black dress, having changed out of her white one just a few moments before. A minor key version of Here Comes the Bride plays her to the ring, and Kane looks livid. I like the idea of Kane, the big red machine, the monster who sets people on fire, is looking at Lita going, this is not part of the colour scheme that we chose. She is definitely going to clash with the flower wall at the wedding breakfast. This is not what we discussed at the detailing. I am livid. He comes around to it though. I think he's just happy to see his wife at the end of the aisle. It's a beautiful occasion. The Justice of the Peace introduces Raw General Manager Eric Bischoff, who gives us a Bible reading, which is beautifully emphasized by what chants from the crowd. Kane has even got on Adobe Premiere and made a video showing the highlights of his and Lita's love story in bunny rabbit ears. Kane delivers one of the great romantic speeches at this point, saying to Lita, when I first chose you to carry my seed, I thought of you as an instrument, nothing more. But you're more than the woman carrying my child. You are my property, and you'll never know freedom. There is no escape from this day forward until the day you die. You are mine. Sorry, I've got something in my eye there. Incidentally, my now wife advised me against using wrestling promos during my actual wedding speech. I mean, I get it. It's far too beautiful. We don't want Auntie Belinda sobbing in the pews during the hand fastening. Lita also prepared some words for the big day. She said, I hate you, Kane, more than life itself. You are a vile, horrible man with no soul. And even though I have no choice to marry you, I want to make it clear I will always love Matt Hardy. The only joy I have now in life is hoping you suffer a horrible accident resulting in your painful immediate death. I sincerely hope you rot in hell. Who's peeling onions in here? Trish Stratus turns up in wedding lingerie and offers to be her maid of honour, which is very kind of her. Admittedly, she's missed out on all the maid of honour duties at this point, like organising the hen do and talking the bride down when the wrong wedding veil turns up. She tells Lita to embrace her new husband. All she needs to do is open her heart the same way she opened her legs. Yikes. This leads to a scrap that Kane separates, and shortly afterwards, leaving it as late as possible, I'm only going to assume it was traffic, Matt Hardy crashes the wedding, attacking Kane and hitting a twist of fate on the floor. Matt runs up the ramp holding Lita, and Kane sends a wall of fire to the top of the ramp to stop them from escaping. Kane sends Matt Hardy plummeting to earth with a chokeslam off the stage. Kane then drags Lita back to the altar where the JOP concludes proceedings and makes them officially husband and wife. Kane kisses his bride, and with that, they are wed. The Wrestling Observer reported that an estimated 1.2 million homes tuned in for the final segment of Raw that night to see how this coupling would come off the rails, and it ended up being one of the most successful segments of the year, whether you liked it or not, and there's a lot of uncomfortable undertones around it all. It was sports entertainment, at least. Matt Hardy disappears from our tale at this point. A severe knee injury forced Matt to miss the rest of the year and the start of the next one. However, this will not be the last time we talk about him. Of that, I assure you. The following week, Kane celebrates married life, dragging his wife to the ring and revealing the wedding gift he got from Eric Bischoff, an open contract to face anyone at WWE Unforgiven. He also reveals a special gift he got for Lita, a visit from Matt Hardy's family, which brings out a selection of indie guys dressed as Matt's kin. This segment started and ended so quickly, I can only assume it was to not make people think that Jeff Hardy was going to pop up. Once he introduces them all, the bell sounds and a 4-on-1 handicap match begins where Kane just obliterates them all in less than 30 seconds. Lita reveals that she has a surprise for Kane and has already chosen Kane's opponent for Unforgiven, the returning Shawn Michaels. HBK would beat Kane in his first match back with a little help from Kane's betrothed. Kane was livid the following night on Raw and looked to take out his frustrations on HBK, but Eric Bischoff couldn't book that match, so he booked Kane in a no disqualification match against an unknown talent looking for an opportunity. A beefy, goateed fella named Gene Snitsky. Gene was signed to a WWE developmental deal in late 2003, sent down to Ohio Valley Wrestling to compete as Mean Gene Mondo, the kayfabe brother of Mike Mondo. Vince and co were so enamored with this big boy, they saw a malleable star to mold and didn't waste any time bringing him up. September 13th, 2004, he had his first ever televised WWE match, and what a debut it was! Snitsky put up a fight against Kane, but Kane was just too strong. Lita jumped into the ring to stop the carnage, and whilst Kane was chewing out his wife for disobeying him, Snitsky hit Kane with a steel chair. Kane collapsed on top of Lita, who clutched her stomach in pain. Kane stopped fighting and the match was called off. Doctors came ringside, immediately checking on Lita. She was stretchered from the ring and Kane, beside himself, was screaming at the doctors asking if the baby was okay. The next week on Raw, we hear from Gene Snitsky, who is out here to clear his name, saying what happened to Lita last week was not his fault. When asked if he had any remorse, he reiterates, "It wasn't my fault." And with that, a B-level catchphrase was born. WWE dispatched Todd Grisham to the medical facility where Lita is being looked after. He interviews Kane, who is in a polo shirt and casual trousers, the most alarmingly normal he has ever looked. Kane says it's 50-50 for the baby's survival at the moment and declares that Snitsky is a dead man. And with that, a B-level storyline was born. Later that night, we get the news that the baby has been lost. And Kane, in a bizarre scene, is at the bedside of Lita, screaming and sobbing as Lita lies emotionless in the hospital bed. It is a deeply unsettling scene that you're then pulled out of, as it's followed up by a Simon Dean vignette calling out all the fat people in the audience. And then we get the Diva Search final. The Wrestling Observer reported at the time that the original plans would have seen the full 9 months of Lita's pregnancy play out, with a baby arriving and everything. However, the change in direction, whilst utterly tasteless for those who'd been through it, was WWE's way of getting out of long-term story plans. It does make me think how far this story would have gone. Would Kane and Lita have had to leave mid-match when their child needed burping, leading to a sharp rise in count-out losses? Would they have had stroppy teenager Kane Jr. rebelling against his parents and getting a tattoo live on Raw? I don't know where they would have gone with this, to be honest. Trousers and polo shirt Kane is interviewed by Todd Grisham the following week, saying their baby was the only thing that he and Lita shared. And then he reiterates that Gene Snitsky is indeed a dead man. Snitsky, however, is loving life. He's having quite the moment in the sun right now. A few weeks ago, he was nobody. This week, after all that happened, he has his own theme song, he has a Titantron that loops the controversial chair shot over and over again, and he even picks up a win on Raw. He beats Val Venus with a pump handle snowplow, so he's even got a finisher out of this as well. It's weird when you think about this, right? Yeah, you may be responsible for a child being lost. Here's a theme song and here's a video for your next entrance. He gives a hilariously insincere apology and reminds us once again that it wasn't his fault. and he will be on Monday Night Raw if Kane wants to address it. Raw emanates from Madison Square Garden the following week, where Gene Snitsky, with new theme music again, is interviewed by Jim Ross. First comes love, then comes marriage, then comes Snitsky with the baby carriage. Gene walks this pram around the ring, presumably so all the women in the crowd can see a man pushing a baby buggy and coo, what a hands-on daddy he is. Gene is met with chants of baby killer and immediately reminds JR what happened, you guessed it, was not his fault. Before the interview can really continue beyond Gene's now infamously famous catchphrase, Kane appears. Gene throws the baby carriage at Kane and then goes to town on Kane with a lead pipe that he'd concealed in the baby carriage, busting the monster open. It builds to a pay-per-view showdown between Kane and old Snitto at Taboo Tuesday, a steel chain match, the stipulation chosen by the perverts on .com, which saw Snitsky beat Kane, and this led to Kane being written off TV because that attack by Gene was so brutal that he simply had to take some time off. In truth, he was off filming See No Evil, his first foray into being an actual celluloid monster. Previously, the baby was the only bond that Kane and Lita shared. Now, the bond that ties them is a mutual hatred of their enemies, such as Gene Snitsky. It was during a highlight reel segment, where I feel like a lot of this story is played out, that Gene Snitsky interrupted a heated confrontation between Lita and Trish Stratus. Snitsky came out, seemingly holding a baby in a blanket. Snitsky held a microphone to the baby as it cried and told the baby to shut up, which I'm sorry was quite funny. Snitsky, clearly trying to upset Lita, stood in the ring and said he could do whatever he wanted with this baby. And with that, Snitsky drops his microphone and he punts the baby into the crowd. A guy near the front grabs the baby doll as it comes towards him and holds it up like he's just caught a home run ball. I hope that baby is in a happy home, or at least on eBay somewhere. This would become Gene Snitsky's most iconic WWE moment. The punt of '04, if you like. One that he would be asked about in interviews and be remembered by in oddball top 10 lists for years to come. Snitsky said backstage Vince McMahon was very concerned that Gene would botch the kick, because that would really ruin this storyline, wouldn't it? He told him over and over again to not miss when he went to kick the baby. But Gene reassured him that he, Gene Snitsky, was an all-area punter in high school, so it would never be a concern. One of those conversations that you can only have in wrestling, isn't it? Whatever you do, don't miss when you kick the baby. Lita warned Snitsky that her husband was coming to get him, and boy he did, beating him from pillar to post at New Year's Revolution and in a no-holds-barred match on Monday Night Raw. Lita was back in ring by the end of 2004, and she became WWE Women's Champion, making history in the process. The women's title match with her and Trish Stratus being the first women's title match to main event Monday night ever. As well as making history, Lita almost became history in this match when her crumple physics were put to the test with this horrifying suicide dive to the outside. An injury at New Year's Revolution in January of '05 cut Lita's in-ring comeback off prematurely, and she once again vanished from TV. Trish reveled in Lita's injury, which led her husband, Kane, to come out and defend the honor of his wife, Lita, choke slamming Trish into oblivion. A horrible spot. On screen, Lita was very much still married to Kane. It was mentioned on commentary pretty often, with JR and Jerry Lawler seemingly forgetting the horrible circumstances in which this marriage actually occurred. However, it was around January of '05 that the backstage outer marital affairs of one Amy Dumas came to the fore. Matt Hardy, rehabilitating post-knee surgery, took a call from the real-life then-wife of Adam Edge Copeland, who was curious to know why her husband and Ms. Dumas were calling each other so often. All parties involved knew that with Matt being off the road, Adam and Amy were riding together. There wasn't anything suspicious, at least not until that point. At least not until a few weeks later, when Matt says he intercepted messages from Amy's phone from Adam. And Well, they weren't just mates chatting, let's put it that way. It all came out then. Adam Copeland and Amy Dumas had been having an affair whilst on the road. Matt Hardy took all of this public online, and soon afterwards their relationship was well and truly over. How did WWE react to this real-life emotional unraveling? Matt Hardy had been cheated on by Amy Dumas and Adam Copeland. So what would they do to resolve the issue? Is it not obvious? They put plans in place to push Edge and Lita on TV, and on April the 11th, they fired Matt Hardy. It's been reported that Matt's release was due to his unprofessional conduct online. Calling out the real goings-on of his partner and his friend was damaging the integrity of the wrestling storyline that they were currently involved in. Around this time, Adam Copeland reportedly got his tyres slashed as well. And whilst it wasn't known if Matt was the culprit, it was shortly after this event that Hardy was released. Lita returned to TV with all of this going on to accompany her husband on TV, Kane. But things were different. She seemed, in storyline, very much into Kane at this point. The two were necking on before Kane's match with Viscera at Backlash 2005. They'd become love's young dream, it seems. And yes, I am as baffled as you are. The crowd reaction to Lita was very different by now too. Kane had, somehow, become a good guy through all of this. But the crowd weren't cheering Lita. There were some derogatory chants, as well as scattered calls of "We want Matt" that were just getting louder. But they were no longer rallying behind the damsel in distress caught in the web of the big red machine. Presumably this is where they made her character more doting towards Kane, maybe planting some seeds for what was to come. The turning point in this sordid love story came on May 16th, 2005. Kane went one-on-one with Edge in the finals of WWE's Gold Rush tournament. And as Kane looked to set up the finish for the match, putting away the rated R superstar, Lita threw Edge his Money in the Bank briefcase. He used it as a weapon and defeated Kane. Raw ended with Edge and Lita standing tall, smiling like perverts and kissing each other's faces off. It was a setup all along. "She's a married woman!" screamed JR, who was ringside when said awful marriage went down, but he's now dumbstruck that the sanctity of marriage was being tarnished in such a way. Edge and Lita reveal their reasoning and their seasoning for their plot last week on Raw the following week. With security guards around the ring in case Kane gets a bit revengey, Lita perfectly justified her actions, reminding us of the kidnapping, the marriage, the pregnancy. She used Kane to take care of all her problems until she didn't need him anymore. She revealed that the only man who could satisfy her was the man she'd been seeing behind his back, the man she fell in love with, Edge. I mean, the best heels justify their actions, and I guess Lita absolutely had every right to turn on Kane the way she did. But the fact that this is so true to the real life story, if you replace Kane with Matt, makes it a bit unsettling. The story wrapped up with Kane and Edge having a grudge match at Vengeance 2005 and a stretcher match on Raw in July that saw Kane written off television. Kane disappeared as the original apple of Lita's eye made a dramatic return to the company due to overwhelming public demand. And from here, the very artificial world of wrestling binned off one storyline to pick up a very real one in return. And that story is probably for another time, though. As we come up for air on this deep dive, this was a storyline that, like Auntie Belinda at the wedding evening do, had overstayed its welcome. It was a story that The Office had given up on months before, but injuries and schedule clashes somehow kept it crawling along. If anything, as a result of the very real affair that had taken place behind the scenes, the one that had killed off the crowd's interest in any part of this, WWE finally had an out for the marriage of Kane and Lita, something they probably were struggling to reach by this point. It was a tale that needlessly upset a lot of people with its very real, deeply dark overtones, one that you didn't need to do in wrestling, and one that people were ready to see the back of. When the audience are ready for you to talk about a shoot affair and a cheering as a random new wrestler kicks a baby into the crowd, you know it's not gone the way you hoped. By the power vested in me, I pronounce this deep dive into a torrid tale of husband and wife concluded. Please help yourself to wedding cake on your way out. Stay safe and love you. Bye.